Welcome to Catholic Answers Live, the program where you participate with your questions about apologetics and evangelization, including the most important theological, spiritual, moral, and social issues facing the world today. Call now with your question for today's guest. Toll free 1-888-31-TRUTH. That's 888-318-7884. Now, from San Diego, Catholic Answers Live.
Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. Saints, thanks so much for joining us. It is Tuesday, and that means open forum. And open forum means whoever you are and whatever your question about the Catholic Church, about the Catholic faith, about Catholic people, Catholic life, they are all welcome. 888-318-7884 is the number. 888-318-7884. I must say that on open forum days, the lines tend to fill up quickly. So if you have not dialed yet, go ahead and start dialing 888-318-7884. Our guest this hour is our Director of Apologetics and Evangelization here at Catholic Answers, Tim Staples. Hi, Tim.
Hello there, Cy Kellett. How are you?
I am very well, thank you. I'm super happy to be here with you today. I don't know. I have no particular reason for that except that you're Tim Staples, and it's fun to do an hour of radio with you.
It is always fun, my friend.
888-318-7884 is that number. And Nathan is manning the phones. He'll be happy to take your call. If you're not a Catholic, you can call. If you are a Catholic, you can call. If you're not sure, you can call as well. And whatever the question is, it is more than welcome. Tim, I'm in looking at the news today, looking around the world, there seems to be this kind of I guess a lot of subterfuge is what I'm trying to say. And so we're not supposed to lie. And I have this question. Say that I'm a spy.
Yeah.
Okay? Because that's what I'm talking about. A lot of this kind of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Can I lie if I'm spying for my country? You know, if I'm in a foreign country under false pretenses or something like that?
Yes, this is an age-old dispute in the church.
Oh.
You know, in this sense, you know, the Catechism of the Catholic Church in paragraph 2485 lays out what is a very solid Thomistic argument against lying. It's rooted in human nature because of the fact that the communicative faculty is ordered toward the communication of truth. If you knowingly and willingly communicate a falsehood, you're acting contrary to the nature of the faculty itself. And so that is wrong. Now, not necessarily mortal, because you have to look at the nature of the lie to determine whether it's venial or mortal, but it is a lie. And we can never say that the end justifies the means. So if you have something that's objectively immoral, you can't, say, well, we're going to do something immoral here because we've got this good goal in the end here. The end doesn't justify the means. All right, so, and there are now let's get to the controversial part because this gets kind of fun. I'm weird. I say fun, but
It is fun.
I love theology. There is disagreement in the church over, as the Catechism of the Catholic Church says shortly after, and I forget which paragraph there, 2485 and following, says that the right to the truth is not absolute. So in other words, if I'm in a situation where, the classic, I have a Jew hiding in my attic, Nazis at the door. Is there a Jew in your attic? Do you have to say, sure, come on in. He's right upstairs. His name is Mordecai.
Yeah, right.
No, you don't. And all involved in the discussion know that, no, you don't have to communicate that. Why? Because that Nazi does not have a right to that information. Now, the Catechism says in that case you can use discreet language, right? It never says that you can lie. It says you can use discreet language. And the debate is, what does that mean? And that's where the debate begins, because for the Thomists, and I think the Catechism seems to be leaning in this direction in paragraph 2485, you would have to use discreet language in the sense of, what do you mean, do I have a Jew in my attic?
No, which is really not going to help. In
It's
that
not going to
situation.
help. That's
Yeah,
right.
right.
Whereas one Thomist I read some time ago said, what you do is close the door and run like crazy. You know? but thanks be to God, there is another option. Great thinkers like Cardinal Newman, for example, would argue that there is this tradition in our church of mental reservation, which means in that case where the person does not have a right to that information, you can say to them, no, I do not have a Jew in the attic. And that would not be a lie. So it's not, those who argue for mental reservation are not saying that we're frustrating the communicative faculty or acting contrary to it. Because of the fact that the person doesn't have a right to that information, you can say, I do not have a Jew in the attic. Now, in your mind, you're saying, for you, because you have
see.
That's
So
the
you're
idea.
reserving some of the statement to yourself because they don't have a right to that knowledge.
Exactly.
I got
Now,
you.
there's arguments, some would say, well, that's not discrete language, that's just telling a lie. And that's where the argument is. But I think Cardinal Newman makes a very good argument that the person has to have a right to that information. And the Catechism does hint at the right to the truth is not absolute. So that's where it's at. I was talking with some of the guys in the office a few months ago about this, and I said, I just pray that when the day comes when whoever takes over the United States government and we're
like Red Dawn or something.
Yeah, and we're hiding in the attic. I hope a Thomist doesn't answer the door when they're looking for me.
When you're thinking about what house to go stay in, just don't go to Ed Fazer's house. Well, I don't know if Ed Fazer's a Thomist, but I think
yes,
is he?
Yes, he's very
So
much.
now we're just kidding, Dr. Fazer, if you're listening. It's just
and
a joke.
brilliant Thomist.
Yeah, right.
You don't want
right.
to get on the other side of an argument with him.
I see. All right, so it is
Yeah.
actually an area where maybe there's not a full, final, comprehensive answer. There's going to have to be some prudence in these situations.
There is, and there's a general principle that's laid out in the Catechism. No, we can't lie, but there is some wiggle room as to what constitutes a lie.
I see.
Is the refusal of information a lie? And certainly not. But how far do you go? Again, if for the Thomist, if you go to the point of communicating something that's objectively untrue, then they would say that's a lie. And in that case, as I was talking to Father Hugh Barber, he said, you know what, you lie then. It would be venial at
Yes,
at absolute worst. And
Right.
and so many Thomists would say that as well, that you would go ahead and lie in that situation to save the person's life. I tend to lean toward Cardinal Newman a bit on that one because I don't believe that would be a lie.
Fair enough. And there's some people, I think for me, Pope Benedict is one and Cardinal Newman is one.
Yeah.
You kind of just feel like I can trust that person. Like, even if I can't finally fully just absolutely come to, I trust Cardinal Newman.
Yeah, and there's some interesting things in sacred scripture that lend themselves, like Jesus saying, no man knows the hour, not even the Son, but only the Father. What's going on there? Of course Jesus knew when he was coming again because he knew all things, and we know that elsewhere in sacred scripture. Peter says to him, Lord, you know all things, in John chapter 21, verses 15 through 17, for example. So what's going on there? Well, many argue that there he's using a kind of mental reservation, saying it's not for you to know. And so I don't know this for you. I'm not, why? Because they were trying to force him to become king and so forth.
Right.
And they had a completely wrong understanding of what the second coming of the Lord means. There are those who argue that. Now, of course, there's another argument that would say, when Jesus says no man knows the hour, Pope Gregory, for example, in the 7th century, argued that he didn't know it from his human nature. It had to be revealed to him.
I see, yeah.
And so in that sense, he could say, I don't know this, in the sense of it had to be revealed to him. So there are differing arguments there. But one thing is certain, he certainly doesn't reveal it to them
Right.
even though he knew it. He doesn't reveal it to him. And it's interesting here that if you go from that text to Acts chapter 1, where is it? Right around verse 7, he says, it is not for you to know the times and seasons which God has placed in his own authority.
Oh, yeah.
So he even indicates after the resurrection that it's not for you to know right now. When they asked him, will you restore,
Right.
restore the kingdom
yeah,
now
yeah.
in Acts chapter 1. So Jesus himself kind of gives credence to the idea that he was actually saying it's not for you to know, not that he didn't actually have the intellectual knowledge. And isn't this fun?
It is fun. Yeah, it is fun and fascinating. Yeah, and very helpful.
Yeah.
I know that I wouldn't tell. Well, I don't know. There's some things that have a kind of both when the intellectual and the kind of intuitive resonate with one another. Then you're
Right.
and that idea, like you said, people basically know. You can't say, "Yeah, I got a Jew in the attic." You just
Or you
can't
got
do
Tim
that.
Staples in the act when they're coming
Yeah.
to kill me.
That's
Si.
a different thing.
See that?
If Valerie
He
and the
gives
kids are
me
there,
a-
well,
yeah,
then,
there you go.
then I'll commit the venial sin. Other than that, Staples, I'm not going to purgatory for you. 888-318-7884 is the number. 888-318-7884. We'll be right back with your calls for Tim Staples on Open Forum here on Catholic Answers Live right after this.
Hi, this is Tim Staples. Are you looking for an on-fire Catholic speaker to come and speak at your conference or parish event? We've got a whole host of Catholic Answer speakers just waiting to get on a plane and come see you. Go to CatholicAnswerspeakers.com to get all the information you need to make your event the talk of the town. That's CatholicAnswerspeakers.com. We look forward to seeing you.
Atheists claim theists are essentially no different than atheists because we reject gods too, such as Greek and Roman gods. But this is plain absurdity. What's our reason? First, it's an abuse of language. A theist believes in at least one God. An atheist doesn't believe in any God. They're mutually exclusive terms. To say a theist is an atheist to most gods is like saying a married man is a bachelor to most women. Second, it's bad reasoning. To say I'm an atheist because I reject some gods is like saying I'm an anarchist, one who rejects all forms of government because I reject communism and fascism, some forms of government. But that's silly. So the claim that atheists and theists are no different doesn't hold water. I'm Carlo Broussard with the ready reason for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
Homeschool Connections, an online provider of courses for your Catholic homeschool, is a sponsor of Catholic Answers Live. Homeschool Connections website is homeschoolconnections.com.
Pope Francis said, "The key that opens the door to the faith is prayer." Join St. Paul Street Evangelization by running a prayer station in the public square. You don't need to be a professional apologist or theologian. Just listen to the needs of the people you encounter. Offer encouragement, take prayer requests, and pray with people. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Call now with your question. 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Tim Staples is our guest. Tim is the author of Behold Your Mother, a biblical and historical defense of the Marian doctrines, which you can get right now at shop.catholic.com for 15% off. I say that because everything there is 15% off. Books, CDs, DVDs, ebooks, tracks, MP3s, the whole deal. You just go to shop.catholic.com and you put in the promo code SPRING18, and then your purchase will ring up with 15% off. Tim, every line full, shall we?
Hey, let's rock and roll.
William in Greenville, North Carolina, you are on with Tim Staples. William, your question.
Hey, thank you guys for taking my call.
Yes.
My question was about whether or not it's right to ask for the intercession of Old Testament saints and why, I guess, the great figures of the Old Testament like Moses and Elijah and David aren't, I guess, why don't they have saint in front of their name?
Yes,
why aren't they
it's a
saints?
great question. Actually, they do. In fact, if you, on the Roman calendar, for example, We have Saint Elisha, or Elisha. We have Saint Elijah. We do have Saint Moses. Of course, we have Saint Michael the Archangel, Saint Raphael, Saint Gabriel as well. So actually, we do have Old Testament saints on the calendar, and we acknowledge that there are Old Testament saints. That's greatly, not only do we have it on the Roman calendar, or on our liturgical calendar, both East and West, but you also have, of course, the great symbols in the book of Revelation. For example, chapter 5, verse 8, you have the 24 elders who are in heaven, who many believe that 24 is significant because it's symbolic of the 12 patriarchs, 12 apostles, right? 12 plus 12 is 24, meaning all of the people of God down through the centuries in heaven interceding for us. And they're depicted as receiving the prayers coming up from the earth and taking them to God. And then, of course, you also have Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1, which I think is an awesome text for this, William, where, you know, the inspired author says, seeing that we are encompassed about with such a great cloud of witnesses, let us run the race with patience set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, right? Who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of God. It's a beautiful text. But what is this cloud here? We're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. Who are these?
Yeah.
Well, it's the entire chapter of Hebrews chapter 11. The inspired author had started with Abel and gone all the way through down to verse 35 to Second Maccabees, recounting the great saints of old. And he says, we're surrounded by this great cloud, which, by the way, William, is really significant because the Hebrew, anan for cloud is very significant because God dwells in the cloud. In the Old Testament, remember, God dwells in the cloud, and when the cloud comes down, it's the glory of God, the Shekinah, right? The glory of God dwells in the Anan, the cloud. And so the people are afraid and such because God alone dwells in the cloud. Well, according to the inspired author here, to the Hebrews, writing to Jewish folk, they know the significance of the cloud. But now it's not just God, but all of the Old Testament saints are in the cloud. The idea is with God. And so that's why when you read down to Hebrews 12, 18 through 24, and especially there, verse 24, where the inspired author sort of contrasts the two covenants. And by the way, William, this is a theme in all of Hebrews, is the superiority of the new covenant over the old. And that's why he starts with the angels in chapter 1, to whom the first century Jews, especially of the sect of the Pharisees, had great devotion. And he shows how Jesus is superior to the angels. And he goes down the list. He's superior to Moses. You get into chapter 3. He's superior to Moses, superior to Aaron. And he goes down. He's superior to all the sacrifices, the temple, the offerings, everything, all the way down to there in Hebrews 10, where he begins to introduce the church. Jesus Christ, of course, and then the church as superior to the old covenant people of God. And that leads up to, you see, especially verses 22 through 24, where he says, when we approach God now, we don't just approach God as they did in the Old Testament, but now we approach God, we approach Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, an innumerable company of angels. And then you get down to the end there, in verse 24, it also says, the spirits of just men made perfect. So we are surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses, which includes the spirits of just men made perfect. So anyway, William, I went beyond your question there, but I wanted to give you a biblical sort of foundation of why we believe they're Old Testament saints. The inspired author of Hebrews says, hey, they're all around us. You can pray to them, and they'll cheer you on in running the race. And of course, we have the great saints on the liturgical calendar as well. Does that help, William?
Definitely. Thank you.
Okay, brother. Thanks for calling. God bless you.
Thank you very much, William. It's so wonderful to think about that. The way you describe. I mean, it's not like I don't know it, but to just think about that. And I had never heard the part about the cloud before.
It's glorious.
Yeah. But it gives a whole new meaning to the phrase "welcome home."
Amen, brother.
Mary in Melbourne, Florida, listening on Divine Mercy Radio. You are up next with Tim Staples. Your question, please.
Yes, I'm a catechist at our local parish,
Yes.
and one of our last sessions, well, it was before Easter, I had a teaching on the moral teaching of the Catholic Church. So, of course, birth control was one of them, and I talked about how artificial birth control was intrinsic evil. The Catholic Church says it's wrong. We should partake in any form of artificial birth control, and that natural birth control with a rhythm method is an acceptable form of birth control. But also the fact that we should be open to be able to receive conception if that's what happens, to be open for that. And one of the questions, one of the people had to me goes, well, but even a natural rhythm is trying to prevent conception, just like artificial is. So I don't understand why I can't use artificial.
Okay, here's the key. I think what we want to focus on here is contraception. That is what is intrinsically evil. We can never contracept. You're right. The regulation of births, if that's what you mean by birth control, can be morally illicit. But contraception, meaning any action. Now, we talked about earlier the communicative faculty. When we look at human nature from a natural law perspective, as St. Paul does, right, in Romans 1, 28 and 29, in Romans 2, 14. From the perspective of natural law, we look at the nature of the act of procreation, and it is ordered toward, first, its primary sense is the procreation of children, propagate the species, and secondly, it is for the union of one man, one woman, or as St. Thomas Aquinas says, the mutual perfection of the spouses, right? So that is the purpose for the act. Now, if you do anything that thwarts, and this is the key to teaching this catechetically, if we do anything willfully that thwarts either one of those essential ends, that act becomes gravely disordered, right? That becomes a grave matter, all right? So, for example, if we use some, in vitro fertilization that actually takes away the unitive aspect of the conjugal act, that becomes gravely disordered. You're actually trying to conceive a child, but you're not doing it the way God wills. So you're not attempting, but you're thwarting the unitive aspect that is essential to the nature of the act itself. And so that act then becomes gravely disordered. Now, on the flip side, contraception, now whether it's the pill, whether it's a barrier method, really doesn't matter. But if we freely and willfully act against that procreative aspect of the conjugal act, that becomes gravely disordered. Now, in the case of using, natural family planning, you're not doing anything to thwart the end or the natural end of the conjugal act. You're actually respecting the conjugal act so much that you say, you know what, we, through prayer and such, believe that it's not the time for us to have children right now, and the reasons can be medical, financial, very psychological problems that you determine, in spiritual direction before God. You say, you know what, we're not ready. We're not going to do anything that thwarts either one of the ends of the conjugal act, because that would be immoral. What we do is we respect the act, and so we only have conjugal relations in periods of time where the wife cannot conceive. So you're not doing anything to objectively thwart the end of the conjugal act. The action that you're performing is open to God's will. You're not putting up a barrier to block, but you're saying we're open but we're going to use the natural rhythm. That's why it used to be called the rhythm method, although now we have a much more accurate ways of knowing when the wife is fertile and when she is not. So there is a radical, in fact, an essential difference between respecting the nature of the woman and only having relations during her infertile period, because that's saying, you know what, it's not God's will for us to have children at this time. But we're not going to have conjugal relations during her fertile period and then actively thwart that unitive, or I should say procreative end of the conjugal act. So there is an essential difference. Hopefully we can bring her back after the break just to be sure we're clear on this.
Okay, hang on, Mary. We'll be right back after this with more Open Forum on Catholic Answers Live with Tim Staples right after this.
Catholic Answers Live.
EWTN, teaching the truth.
I have wanted to thank you so very much. Thank God you guys are here for us. Believe it. I just can't believe all that you've done and how you've stuck with it. Many times when I think I can't do something, I think about some of the things that you've talked about.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Hi, this is Trent Horn, and you've probably heard me explain Catholicism to non-Catholic callers on the radio or engage opponents in formal public debates. I've always hoped these interactions would show people how to graciously defend and share our faith. But they're not enough. That's why I've created a weekly podcast that will help Catholics answer the toughest objections against our faith. Every episode of the Council of Trent will provide listeners with a conversation roadmap that will help them share their faith with anyone. Keep in mind that I hate boring lectures. These podcasts will contain entertaining, informative, and practical explanations of the faith, as well as interviews with the best Catholic writers and speakers in the world today. Visit TrentHornPodcast.com today to find out how you can subscribe to my new podcast. That's TrentHornPodcast.com.
The world is changing. The days of picking up a paperback book or popping a DVD or compact disc in the player have given way to the digital age. The good news is that the shop at Catholic.com has joined the digital revolution. Check out the new digital platform at shop.Catholic.com, where all of our DVDs, books, and audio products are now available in digital form for you to purchase and download at your convenience, anywhere you go. For that matter, anywhere in the world. We've got hundreds of offerings, so visit shop.Catholic.com today and check out our selection. That's shop.Catholic.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Tim Staples is our guest this hour. When we went to our break, Mary in Melbourne, Florida, listening on Divine Mercy Radio, was asking about contraception and a little more. We wanted to first check in with you, Mary, see if what Tim has said thus far strikes you as clear or muddled. Mary?
Perfect sense. Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
It makes perfect sense to me as far as the natural planning, that you are not blocking anything, that you're not putting anything to prevent conception, and that artificial means is blocking, is actually making that,
That's right. And that's why I like to use the language of contraception, because there's nothing contraceptive about using natural family planning. You are only doing something that's completely consonant with God's will. It's not God's will to have a child now because your wife is not fertile, but that doesn't mean you can't have conjugal relations. Of course you can. You are acting in concert with God's revealed word, both revealed in Scripture and revealed by nature itself. Whereas, as you said, if you actively thwart by contraception, then you're acting contrary to God's revealed word, both in sacred Scripture and in nature. And by the way, if somebody is inclined to argue, I'm going to give you a very blunt sort of image. Some people might get mad at me for this, but I find it a way to really help people to understand. Think about the difference between, you've got grandma who's dying in hospital of cancer or whatever, and you say, she's going to die anyway, so we'll just shoot her in the head. Right? Now, I know that upsets people, but I'm using this as an example. Now, of course, immediately we know, wait a minute, that you can't do that. Of course not. Why? Because you are actively killing her. But she's going to be dead in a few hours anyway, and she's suffering, so why not? Well, the difference is this. There is an essential difference between actively killing Grandma and holding her hand, praying with her until God takes her home. In one, you're not doing anything except praying for her and such and allowing God's will be done. In the other, you're actively taking a life that God alone has the authority to take. In the same way, with the conjugal act, the conjugal act has a nature given to it by God, and we have no right. There is an enormous, in fact, an essential difference between respecting the nature of that act and allowing God's will to be done and saying, yeah, I know the nature of the act, but I'm going to thwart it because I don't want it right now.
Yeah.
That's acting contrary to God's will. Great question, though, and thanks for calling.
And thanks for hanging on, Mary, so we could make sure we were going in the right direction for you. 888-318-7884 is the number. Or for those joining us on Facebook or YouTube, if you type in a question, we'll try to get to it. Also, I got to apologize to the Facebook viewers. Yesterday, Facebook was down for us. It wasn't an in-house problem. It was a service provider problem. But sorry that we weren't with you on Facebook yesterday. But we're there today. And now this question comes from YouTube, where people use fake names on YouTube. So just so you know, this is not his real name. Convulsing Bald Man asks, why do we not adhere to the rules and laws in Leviticus anymore?
Great question. And the answer is found from a New Testament perspective in Hebrews 7, verses 11 and 12. And we had, by the way, we were just talking about the book of Hebrews. Important to understand context. Hebrews is being written, let's see, to the Hebrews.
Yeah.
These are Hebrew Christians who were being tempted to go back to the old covenant law. They were essentially being taught, look, it's great you believe in Jesus and all that, but if you want to get to heaven, you got to be circumcised, you got to go to the temple, you got to offer sacrifice, and all of that stuff. And notice what the inspired author says in Hebrews 7, verses 11 and 12. He says, for if perfection came by the Levitical law, what further need was there that another should be called and arise according to the order of Melchizedek and not after the order of Aaron? And now look at verse 12. It says, for where there is a change in priesthood, there is of necessity a change of law. Hebrews 7, 11, and 12 nails it to the wall there, because he's basically saying, look, you guys are being told you need the Levitical priesthood, you need the Aaronic priesthood, and the inspired author is saying, if that's how perfection comes, why is it? And by the way, awesome here, the inspired author. You know, those inspired authors are pretty smart.
They were both inspired and inspirational.
That's right. Because he actually quotes Psalm 110, verse 4 there.
Yeah.
That prophecy, it's a messianic prophecy that the Messiah would arise after the order of Melchizedek rather than the order of Aaron. What is this Melchizedek? Well, that has significance with regard to the Eucharist, because Melchizedek, of course, offered bread and wine and so forth. You can read all about that in Hebrews chapter 7. But the point is, he says, this is a prophecy that tells you that the Messiah is going to arise after the order of Melchizedek, not Aaron. And he uses that as kind of his jumping off point, if you will, into explaining that we now have a new law, because we have a new priest, a new priesthood in Jesus Christ. And where there's a new priesthood, there is a new law. So I say all that to say this: the Levitical law is gone, according to Hebrews 7, verses 11 and 12. Now, we are under the law of Christ. Go to Galatians chapter 6, verse 2. Go to 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 21. You have St. Paul explicitly saying we are now under the law of Christ.
Convulsing Bald Man, thank you very much for that question. I'm guessing that's not your real name, but we do appreciate the question.
I would love to know what that name means, but okay.
Convulsing Bald Man. I hope it's not like a literal description, because the bald man's fine, but convulsing's uncomfortable. Connor in Nashville, Tennessee, listening on. Oh, Connor, you must be a smart man. You downloaded the Catholic Answers app onto your phone, and that's where he's listening. Connor, you're on with Tim Staples. Your question, please.
Hey.
Yes.
So I guess my question is I'm trying to understand apologetics better.
Yes.
And I've been looking at the biblical arguments for faith alone.
Yes.
And after that, I decided I wanted some of the church fathers' evidence too.
Gotcha.
But while I was online, I could find nothing for or against faith alone. So I was just asking if you could maybe cite some evidence against faith alone from church fathers.
Sure. I will do even better than that. And by the way, it is unanimous among the fathers of the church that justification is both by faith and works or obedience or good deeds. You'll find it in all sorts of documents. And I would encourage you to get a hold of Jimmy Akin's book, The Fathers Know Best. He has a whole section in there on justification by faith alone. But off the top of my head, I would encourage you to check out, and by the way, again, you can find this in St. Clement of Alexandria. You can find this in St. Ignatius of Antioch. But one of my favorites would be St. Clement of Rome in his great letter. As you may, if you've been looking at the church fathers, you know St. Clement, who was our fourth pope. He was the third successor of St. Peter as Bishop of Rome. He's writing a letter to the Corinthians, correcting some abuses that were going on there. And in paragraph 30, the Pope said, or Pope St. Clement, lays out very, very as plain as day, and I can't remember the exact words, but says that basically we are justified by deeds and not by faith alone. That's in paragraph 30 or section 30 of Clement's letter to the Corinthians. And then 2 chapters later, by the way, in section 32, Clement will say we're justified not by our own works, but by the faith that comes from Jesus Christ. So you know what you'll find? You'll find some Protestants who will take paragraph 32 and say, see, Clement says we're justified, not by our own deeds, but by faith. And of course he says that. So does the Catholic Church. We're not justified by works that come from us, right? We are justified or we're saved by grace through faith, and that not of ourselves, not of works, lest any man should boast, as Ephesians 2:8-9 says, right? We can do nothing to merit the initial grace of salvation that we receive. And of course, St. Clement is talking about there, but in paragraph 32. But folks will take 32 out of context and not read paragraph 30, where he just said we're justified by our deeds and not by faith alone. So that's one example that comes to mind. But again, you can go to Catholic.com and check out The Fathers Know Best. You can get that online as well, but I really recommend. Jimmy hit the ball out of the park when he wrote The Fathers Know Best. That thing is packed full of examples on just about every topic you can imagine from the fathers. But at any rate, that'll get you started.
Will it, Connor? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Because Connor, I just had this brilliant idea. Trent always gives away books, so I think I'm just going to give you that book.
Hey, I like that.
Jimmy Akin's book, The Fathers Know Best. Can we get Connor's address and all that? Yeah, we can. Connor, hang on, don't go anywhere, and we'll get it. We'll send you that book out. Now I'm as big a big shot as Trent Horn. We got to take a quick break. Actually, I was going to go to a caller, but it's not a good time to do that. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Open Forum with Tim Staples on Catholic Answers Live right after this.
This is Bishop Robert Barron. You're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Today, countless people have drifted away from their faith. You know the story. Faithful parents and grandparents see their children and grandchildren drift away from the church. At first, they just stop going regularly, but they still consider themselves Christian. Then, later, they or their children stop even thinking of themselves as Christian. Eventually, some of them turn bitter and hostile to religion. This sorrowful sequence has played itself out over and over, literally millions of times. Perhaps it's even played out in your own family. The good news is that there's hope. That's why Catholic Answers is releasing a new book by apologist Matt Nelson. It's called Just Whatever: How to Help the Spiritually Indifferent Find Beliefs That Really Matter. The book is designed to help people without firm Catholic beliefs, regardless of where they're coming from. They may only identify as Christians in a kind of nebulous way. They may say that they're spiritual, but opposed to organized religion, or they may be hostile to religion altogether. Whatever their current views, Matt's new book contains winning, persuasive means for helping them get past their current difficulties and see just how important it is to have a life-transforming encounter with God. To make your donation and get a free copy of Just Whatever, visit Catholic.com and click the Just Whatever banner, or call us toll-free at 888-291-8000. That's the Just Whatever banner at Catholic.com, or call toll-free 888-291-8000.
Catholic Answers Live is brought to you in part by CatholicSingles.com, the website for Catholics who want to meet others who share their Catholic values for faith, fellowship, and love. You can learn more at CatholicSingles.com. Catholic Answers Live thanks CatholicSingles.com for their generous support.
Do you enjoy tedious lectures full of facts you'll never use? We didn't think so. That's why we're launching the Council of Trent, Trent Horn's engaging new podcast. Every week, you'll get lively lessons in Catholic teaching, as well as a new conversation roadmap that will help you share your Catholic faith with anyone, anytime, anywhere. Visit TrentHornPodcast.com now to find out how you can subscribe to this exciting new podcast.
Call now with your question. 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Tim Staples, our guest this hour, and it is open forum, and that means lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of calls. So let's go to Billy in Norwich, Connecticut. Billy, you are on with Tim Staples. Your question, please, Billy. Billy, have I got you? I don't think Billy's there. All right. Well, next time, Billy. We'll check back in a minute, Billy. Well, let's go to an anonymous caller in Minnesota. Anonymous in Minnesota, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Your question.
Thanks for taking the call. First off, just wanted to let you know that it's an honor to be talking with Tim Staples. I kind of mentally freaked out when I saw that he was going to be the guest for this evening.
Well, I appreciate your kind words there. And how do I pronounce your name? Is that Anon?
It's Anon, a mouse.
Yes.
Okay.
No, I'm joking. Our call screener wrote Anon here for anonymous, so that was my attempt at humor. But go ahead, Anonymous.
Okay, so my question has to do with a young man in my home parish that I am familiar with. I've gotten to work with him a couple times.
Yes.
He's from a Catholic family. Very good, as far as I know, very good Catholic family. They're very active in our parish. And he has identified as transgender.
Right.
And so this is where it gets a little bit complicated.
Sure.
One of his parents works in the parish, works with the parish.
Right.
And so when it comes to things like ministry schedules and all that, the names get switched out, and then also.
Excuse me. What do you mean the names get switched out?
Like the feminine name that he's chosen.
Oh, I see.
Gets put in.
Okay, gotcha.
And also, like an elderly person I worked with has referred to him as her, and also other of several of my peers I've heard they kind of seem to have warmed up to the idea.
Right.
And it kind of seems to be a case of, Minnesota nice, as you've probably heard. We're kind of non-confrontational.
Yes.
Anyway, I was wondering And I don't know if our parish priest has taken this on. I don't know what he's doing in that area.
Yes.
But what should be the parish's response,
Sure.
especially when it comes to like publications that use?
Yeah,
That
is a great question. I'm glad you asked this because we're getting this more and more at Catholic Answers. And here's the key. Of course, we welcome folks, and we understand that we are all disordered to various degrees and in various ways. We are all sinners, working out our salvation with fear and trembling, as Philippians 2:12 says. And so we must welcome all, as St. James talks about, in James chapter 2, verses 1 through 9. He there is talking about wealthy and the poor, but you welcome all, and we treat everyone with the same essential treatment because we are all essentially equal, created in the image and likeness of God. And we can't overstate how important that is. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. Male and female, he created them, right? In his image. All right, that's the first thing. But now, when it comes to, transgender, these are tragic situations where you have people that are really struggling. Gender dysphoria can be a very serious matter, can lead to all sorts of depression and such. And so, this person needs help, and we need to love them with the love of Jesus Christ and help them to understand who they are. So we need to understand as Catholics that male and female, he created them. You are either a male or a female, and we know that's a biological fact. Now, there are the extreme, sorts of situations where biologically, you have genuine hermaphrodites, right, that are born. But see, this is a matter of biology where you can determine, and usually even with hermaphrodites, you can determine which they are and help them to grow into who they are, except for some very rare cases where it's very severe. And so, you deal with those exceptional cases. But where you have a case where a person is clearly male, it is a biological fact. We need to help them to understand who they are. But now you've got a person coming into the church who says, hey, I'm identifying as a woman even though he is a man. What do we do? Well, what we can do is, look, if somebody changes their name legally, it doesn't matter, Anonymous, what somebody calls themselves, whether they're a male or a female. They can call them, hey, Pat, right? Pat can be a man or a woman, but I'm joking. We could have Bob who changes his name to Alice, right? Well, I can call Bob Alice. That's just a name. But what I cannot do as a Catholic is to refer to as a he, as a she, because that would be lying. And it would also be disrespecting that person and his God-given gift of maleness. So that's where we have to draw the line as Catholics. We cannot pretend to be God and say, guess what, whammo, I'm going to change you from a male to a female. Doctors who are trying to do this, the arrogance of this, I mean, it's really upsetting that we're going to, clip the plumbing here and turn somebody from a male to a female. No, you can't. All you're doing is disfiguring a man.
Right.
Right. And that's a horrible thing to do. So at any rate, I think that's the key. What we have to do as Catholics is to stick to, Genesis 1:26, male and female, he created them. I can't recreate anybody, and nor can any human being, because God's done that. God does that, and God alone does that. Does that help at all? I mean, we can draw that line, but while remaining respectful, because Sai, if somebody, a man dresses like a woman, I think a pastor is within his right to take him aside and talk with him about that, because, this can cause confusion in the parish and such. But I am not in favor of, standing at the door and throwing them out if they're not dressed appropriately, until such time that a pastor takes the time. And really, that's the role of the pastor. That's the role of a bishop.
Yeah.
And I am not going to usurp that role.
Right.
I will cheer on the bishop, and I'm glad I'm not one of them that has to deal with
So is
that.
Valerie.
But that really, yes, and my 7 kids. But that really is the role of the shepherd to deal with situations like that. What we have to do as Catholic laity is respect that individual person for who they are, male or female, and don't lie and disrespect them by calling them a she when they're actually he. Even if they want you to call them a she, they're not in reality. Does that make sense, Anonymous?
Yes, that does. Thank you.
Yeah, and I know it's a difficult situation, and I know bishops and pastors are struggling with this and such, and we should pray for them because you want to, of course, bring Jesus to these folks. And it's not that some of them don't have Jesus in their life already, absolutely. But I'm saying to bring the fullness of the gospel to them, to help them to be healed, because obviously, and this, what drives me crazy about this whole discussion is it's the actual individual suffering with gender dysphoria that's sort of kicked aside in the whole discussion.
Right.
We have real people who are suffering with a very serious problem. And just saying, oh, this is normal, doesn't help anything.
No, right.
Because it's not normal.
Right.
This is a struggle for many of these folks. And now we have a situation in California where they want to make it illegal for us to reach out to people like this and to homosexuals who are struggling with same-sex attraction and so forth, and make it illegal to minister to them, even if they want to be ministered to. I mean, that's how far we have fallen here. But I will tell you this, brothers and sisters, we as Catholics will not compromise the essence of the gospel for any government, any president or governor or anybody else. We're going to proclaim the truth, male and female, he created them. Whether we're talking about folks with gender dysphoria or same-sex attraction, we're going to proclaim the truth.
Amen to that. I do think, and Anand, thanks so much for that call. We appreciate it. The fact is that in most situations, however, I just want to throw this out at you.
Yeah.
There's a great ambiguity in that you don't know for certain. You have your suspicion.
Yes.
And in those situations, just be respectful.
Absolutely.
Like you just don't know, so be respectful. And also, in dealing with most people, I never call you he. Hey, he, Tim. That's when we're talking to other people. When we're talking to, it's you. And I suppose the fact that you doesn't have a gender is probably a blessing because we can just treat one another respectfully. But I really...
but when you start saying she...
No, then you've crossed the line.
You have, because you're diminishing that person. And that's what we have to keep in mind here. Male and female, he created them.
Yeah, and I wonder if you would agree with me on this too. Some of the anger around people not just going along with this is that because it is actually a surrendering of reality and doesn't have any intellectual support for it, you have to bludgeon people. There's no other way to convince people to say a man is a woman or a woman is a man.
Well, I think we're seeing in our culture, Cy, and for all of our listeners and those of you watching, we are in serious straits as a culture when you see the level of violence that's arising today against anyone who stands for traditional marriage, stands against transgenderism and such. You're right, and I do agree with your analysis totally that there's really no intellectual foundation, and so it's almost to be expected, but to see it real time is so disturbing.
Right.
These folks who are coming with clubs and such after people because they're trying to speak on a campus about these issues.
Right.
This is scary stuff because, folks, we as Catholics are on the other side of this issue and many more when it comes to the moral law. And I've got to put this a little plug in here. We've got an election coming up. And folks, we said this the last election, I know, but my friends, we have got to vote for sanity. We need politicians who understand that life must be protected from the womb to the tomb. We need politicians who understand that God is God and we are not, because we are headed down a very dark path. When it becomes violence, agree with me, or I'm going to bludgeon you.
Yes, I know.
This is extremely dangerous.
Right. And I have to say, I think the primaries is the time to vote, because once you get to general elections, often you have nothing but unacceptable choices in your congressional district or senator or whatnot.
Amen.
Support people who are, basic sanity, like pregnant women have babies inside of them. That's what they're carrying. And men are men and women are women. Those. Tim Staples, it's always a joy. Thanks very much.
Great to be with you, brother.
You can get Tim's book 15% off right now on shop.catholic.com. That's Behold Your Mother, a biblical and historical defense of the Marian doctrines. Open Forum continues after the top of the hour. We'll be back with Patrick Madrid. You've heard of him, Patrick?
I think so.
Yeah. We'll be back with Patrick Madrid taking your calls after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers Live.
The world is changing. The days of picking up a book or popping a DVD or compact disc in the player have given way to the digital age. The good news is that the shop at Catholic.com has joined the digital revolution. Check out the new digital platform at shop.catholic.com, where all of our DVDs, books, and audio products are now available in digital form for you to purchase and download at your convenience. Anywhere you go. For that matter, anywhere in the world. We've got hundreds of offerings, so visit shop.catholic.com today and check out our selection. That's shop.catholic.com.
Catholic Answers is a media ministry that serves Christ by explaining and defending the Catholic faith. We help Catholics grow in their faith, we bring former Catholics home, and we lead non-Catholics into the fullness of the truth. Our goal is to be the most trusted and accessible source for sharing, explaining, and defending the Catholic faith through as many media as possible, from personal contact to the most innovative means of mass communication. Have questions? We've got answers. Catholic Answers. Visit us today at Catholic.com or call us with your questions at 619-387-7200.
What difference does it make who or what you worship or what you believe? Sharing the faith used to make some people mad because it challenged their own strong beliefs. Today, it makes a lot of people yawn because they don't have strong beliefs about anything. Religious indifference is the great spiritual sickness of our age, a product of the relativism that dominates modern culture. This is Matt Nelson, and in my new book, Just Whatever, I'll take down the building blocks of religious indifference one by one. We'll look at the different kinds of indifference you tend to encounter in your friends and family members to see where they come from and why they're seductive. What you believe matters. Find out why and what to do about it in my new book, Just Whatever. You can order your copy of Just Whatever by calling 1-888-291-8000, by visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Sharing the gospel with family and friends can be challenging. It's especially hard when they won't even hear you out because of all the mental roadblocks they've built up. This is Carlo Broussard, and in my new book, Prepare the Way, my aim is to help you tackle that essential first step to apologetics and evangelization, getting people to listen with an open mind. Even our best witness can bounce right off folks like these if we don't prepare the way first, breaking down barriers and leaving minds and souls free to encounter the truth. I'll give you evidence and arguments and step-by-step strategies based on asking the right questions to help them overcome their obstacles and make a straight path for the Lord. Order your copy of Prepare the Way today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Are faith and science compatible? The world tells us no, but history shows otherwise. For it is in the Christian West that the pursuit of science has flourished. Our challenge is in reconciling the divide between faith and science in the popular imagination. Join us this September 27th to the 30th as we tackle the topic at Catholic Answers' 5th National Apologetics Conference, Faith and Science, a lively and inspiring conference designed to jumpstart Start Your Faith. We've got an all-star lineup of speakers guaranteed to make you think. Catholic scientists, theologians, Stacy Trasankos and Father Terrence Ehrman, all of your favorite Catholic Answers apologists, and special keynote speaker Raymond Leo Cardinal Burke. This is where it all begins. Join us this September for a conference that is sure to leave you wanting more. Early bird pricing ends July 2nd. Seats are still available, but they're going fast. Visit CatholicAnswersConference.com or call 1-888-291-8000 today to register. That's CatholicAnswersConference.com.
We're glad you're with us. Stick around for more Catholic Answers Live. Welcome to Catholic Answers Live, the program where you participate with your questions about apologetics and evangelization, including the most important theological, spiritual, moral, and social issues facing the world today. Call now with your question for today's guest. Toll free 1-888-31-TRUTH. That's 888-318-7884. Now, from San Diego, Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to our second big hour of open forum today on Catholic Answers Live, and we brought in the heavy hitters today. So first hour with Tim Staples, second hour we welcome Patrick Madrid. Patrick Madrid is the host of the Patrick Madrid Show all across the country on the Relevant Radio Network. He's the author of many books and the father of many children, I believe 12 children. Is that correct, Patrick?
Yes and no. We have 11 children. Thank you, Cy. 11 children living, and our number 12 we lost in miscarriage.
Oh.
So counting that number 12, yes, 12 children.
Well, a remarkable accomplishment, and you have more books than children, but it was a close run thing for a while there. It's just that
it was neck and neck.
Yeah, it was neck and neck for a while, but it's just that the lifespan of writing books is longer than the fertile life of a couple, so you can just keep going with the books.
Something like that. Yeah, I think that's about right.
I think so.
But yeah, thanks for saying so.
I should mention to people that Patrick and I drive to work every morning together, and I enjoy the drive. Patrick doesn't know that he's driving to work with me, but since he's on the radio. But Patrick, you're killing me. I am trying to participate in the 100 million Memorares for life this year, and I just don't think I can pray 100 million. I'm trying. I don't think I can do 100 million.
Can you give us just 1 million, Memorares?
I don't even.
If you could just give us 1 million, we'd be satisfied.
You're asking a lot of your listeners, Patrick. How are we going to do it?
Well, you know, it's actually the math is interesting because this is a what's the word I'm looking for? This is a cause that we've undertaken at Relevant Radio to pray the Memorare for all the many problems that we have in our society, and just for the sake of all the people listening. Everybody needs prayer. I know you do.
Yes.
And I need some prayer too.
Right.
But the thing is, when we force multiply, and the same is true for any national radio presence, if you have enough people listening and everybody prays the Memorare every hour over the course of a year, you're going to get there. So that's what we're trying to do. And we invite everybody, wherever they may be or wherever they're listening, to join us in praying the Memorare.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah, and I noticed that you also will adapt the Memorare. If someone calls, I was listening the other day, I can't remember, someone had a child who was in distress, and you prayed for that child, and I just think that's a wonderful thing. Catholic radio is just a great thing, isn't it?
It is certainly great, and I say that for all Catholic radio entities, EWTN certainly, and
yeah.
All the independent Catholic radio networks that are out there, certainly Catholic Answers, Relevant Radio. We're all in this together, and we're all pulling in the same direction. So I'm happy to be to second the motion that you just made.
Yeah, and do you know what's something? I actually had this happen one time in the car. It was one of those, some prayer, I don't remember, it might have been the Divine Mercy Chaplet or something. I look over and somebody else is praying it as well because it's at the same time. That's encouraging when that happens. You think, oh, hey, we're getting numbers going now.
I know. That's what's so exciting about it. And what's neat, of course, as you know, Cy, is not only the radio presence, but also the internet, Catholic.com, for example, reaching millions of people all over the world. So many ways in which we can help connect with each other and also get the word out. It's an exciting time to be alive and to be a Catholic, that's for sure.
It is indeed. And we have a ton of people who now have questions for you. Patrick Madrid, are you ready?
I am ready.
You feel
I'm
prepared?
as ready as I'm going to be, that's
All
for
right.
sure.
I hope that's a good thing.
I think it's a good thing.
Okay.
We'll find out.
Anonymous in Boston, Massachusetts, listening on EWTN there. You are on with Patrick Madrid. Your question, please.
Hi, how are you? I just wanted to let you know that I first heard about this radio station by a bumper sticker. So
Oh, that's another.
They are working.
Thank you for saying that, because I see those bumper stickers too, and I just think, oh, that person is saving lives and souls because somebody sees that and they tune in. Thank you for saying that.
Yes, I've been tuning in for a couple of years now. So my question is, I'm 43 years old. I work as a nurse. I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I was married for quite a long time, and my husband became very abusive. So we went to about 5 different marriage counselors and 2 priests, one from his parish and one from the parish that we got married in, and the priest that married us started counseling us. And so, over the course of our marriage and in therapy, it became quite clear to me that he wasn't going to change. He needed medication, and his problems, his mental health problems and his abusive behavior wasn't safe enough for me to just stay in the marriage. So I ended up getting a divorce. And I struggled with that for a very long time because I grew up Catholic, I go to church, and I always thought, gosh, this is like a really bad sin. I can't do this. I need to try harder. What's wrong with me? And it became quite clear that for the safety of my children and I had to leave him. So, then I thought about, a couple of my friends said, did you get an annulment? And I thought about that, and I said, well, to me, if I would have gotten an annulment, and maybe I just didn't understand it correctly because I never really talked to a priest about it, it was almost as if I lied to God, because I was in church, I was married, I had love in my heart, I was honest and true and wanted to make my marriage work and exhausted all avenues that I could, and it just didn't unfold in a more positive direction, so I had to kind of leave. So what I'm wondering is, I kind of always felt guilty for that, and I still consider myself a Catholic. And I go to church, and I actually became a Eucharistic minister, and I pray with my patients, and I give communion with my patients. But I wonder, did I sin, or am I officially not considered a Catholic anymore?
Because of what, Anonymous?
Don't know.
Just be real clear.
Well, because I got divorced.
Gotcha. Okay, Patrick.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. There are situations, and it sounds like yours is one of them, in which there is physical danger to you as the wife or your children or both, in which case the church recognizes that there's just a need for moving out from under the same roof as an abusive spouse. So the church does not say that what you did was wrong by removing yourself from that situation. Now, the question of the divorce itself, that is something that I think you would be well served by sitting down with a Catholic priest, maybe your parish priest, and saying, I love God. I want to be part of the Catholic Church. I miss the sacraments. I want to do the right thing. Can you help me initiate the process of an annulment so that you'll be able to determine, or I should say the tribunal will determine for you, whether or not you had a valid sacramental marriage in the first place, so that you can know with confidence whether or not you would be free, for example, and I know you didn't raise this issue, but whether or not you'd be free to pursue another marriage, if that's something that might be on your mind, or at the very least to be able to say that even if no other marriage might be on the horizon, that you separated from somebody who wasn't sacramentally in a valid way your husband, even though you had been married and everybody assumed that this was a valid marriage. You can at least have peace of mind to know whether or not it may not have been valid in the first place. So I think it would be a good idea to pursue that, and at least you'll have that peace of mind of knowing, because the church will tell you, because of maybe mental illness or there was some addiction to something he never told you about, or maybe some other impediment that was there that you didn't know. My sense is that that would probably be a very healing process for you. Does that make sense?
Yes. Oh, it's kind of a relief to hear. Thank you.
You're welcome. And remember this, that God understands that we all go through sometimes even really insanely difficult situations in life, and he's not going to abandon you. He loves you. He wants you to be happy, and he will always provide a remedy for that to take place. So if you feel that even so, that the divorce situation is something that you need to bring to confession, he's always waiting for you. So don't ever feel as though the door to the Lord is closed to you, or that the church shuns you, or anything like that. It does not. This is a journey of hope. And I really hope that you will investigate the annulment process.
Anonymous, thank you so much for that call. I'm so glad we got to have that conversation with Patrick here. We have to take a quick break, however, so we will be right back with more Open Forum on Catholic Answers Live with Patrick Madrid.
Hello, my friends. This is Christopher Check, president of Catholic Answers. Are you looking for a Catholic speaker to come fire up your conference or parish event? Or maybe give your high school or college students some hands-on training in apologetics? Catholic Answers has a team of first-rate speakers ready to hop in the car or board a plane to come speak to your group. To book a speaker, visit CatholicAnswersSpeakers.com. That's CatholicAnswersSpeakers.com. We look forward to seeing you.
If only evangelization was easy. But the truth of the matter is that most of the time it's not. Talking about the Catholic faith is enough of a challenge even before dealing with the roadblocks that keep people from listening with an open mind. Apologist Carlo Broussard recognized that as he wrote Prepare the Way, a guide to step-by-step strategies that readers can use to break down those barriers to the very existence of God and religious truth, barriers to basic Christian beliefs, and barriers to the distinctive teachings and claims of the Catholic Church. Don't let obstacles get in your way. Learn how to overcome them. Order your copy of Prepare the Way today by calling 1-888-291-8000, logging on to the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
God helps those who help themselves. Preach the gospel always. When necessary, use words. We all hear sayings like these, and we assume they come from the Bible, the saints, or famous Christian writers. Nobody can seem to place their origin, but by sheer repetition, they've acquired a halo of truth. In my new book, What the Saints Never Said, I look at over 40 of these well-known sayings and track them back to their original sources. You'll be surprised at what I found. Some are close to what was really said. Many were misattributed or twisted beyond their original meaning, and more than a few of these sayings were simply made up. I hope by setting the record straight, I can make you aware of the theological errors that can lead us away from the faith and offer you authentic quotes from Scripture, saints, and scholars that will draw you closer to our faith. Get your copy of What the Saints Never Said by calling 1-888-291-8000, by visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or by asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Call now with your question. 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. It's Open Forum today, and Open Forum means if you're Catholic, you can call. If you're not Catholic, you can call. If you got a real hard question, you can call. You got a real easy question, you can call. Any question at all is welcome about the Catholic Church, about Catholic faith or life, our traditions, or the Catholic people, anything. We're willing to take them. 888-318-7884 is the number. This hour, Patrick Madrid, host of the Patrick Madrid Show and the editor of the very popular Surprised by Truth series. Maybe you've seen one of the Surprised by Truth books, among many other things that Patrick has done. He is our guest this hour. And we start this, well, we already started the show, but we start this next segment with Nathan in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Nathan, your question for Patrick.
Yes. My question has to do with the unification of the church as far as different church bodies. My more broad question would be, does emphasizing pious acts traditions unify or divide the church? And to give you an example, I'm actually a Lutheran, Missouri Synod, and some of the older members of my church view making the sign of the cross and various acts like this as too Catholic or things like that. And then some of the younger members, like myself, have started embracing some of that stuff, and in some of the churches that start adding kneelers, whereas in other church bodies they start putting in projectors and more modern music. So a more specific question would be, how do we proceed as individuals and as church bodies? Are there areas that we can emphasize these things or compromise in a way to bring the whole church together, or is it more of a division?
Nathan, thank you for that question, because as you know, for Catholics, it's not just an option, it's required that we be working for the unity of all Christians. So Patrick, any thoughts on how we might go about that, or what things can we compromise on to make that unity possible?
Yes. Well, I appreciate the call, Nathan. I mean, I appreciate the question. My initial answer, and I'm not saying this flippantly, but my initial answer is the solution would be for you to become Catholic. And I don't say that, again, in a disrespectful or flippant way, but if you are drawn to not just the piety of the Catholic Church, but the underlying teachings of the Catholic Church on such things as, say, the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist and the Church's teaching on salvation and justification. And I don't know that you are, but if you are, I would say the easiest solution would be for you to become Catholic. Now, it's always laudable, in my view, and again, I'm a Catholic, so I have a certain bias in this regard, but it's always laudable when even non-Catholics are adopting Catholic methods of piety. So the sign of the cross, which is a sacramental, is a very good thing for any Christian to do. It's not superstitious, and it's not too Catholic. It's just part of the historic Catholic Church. Things like holy water and praying the rosary and all those things, in the minds of those who are opposed to the Catholic Church, they may say, well, if you do those things, then it's tantamount to sort of becoming a Catholic. But that's a good thing, to become a Catholic, because after all, the Catholic Church is the church that Christ established, with no disrespect intended to any other groups. It's a fact. The Catholic Church was started by Jesus. So perhaps if I could refocus the way in which you're asking the question, I would say, why don't we allow these things to lead you personally to unity with the one true church, the Catholic Church? And if you're interested in some Lutherans who have an opinion on this issue, actually they're former Lutherans, there's a good book I would recommend. It's called There We Stood, Here We Stand, edited by Tim Drake, who's a former Lutheran. And it's a compendium of conversion testimonies by former Lutheran ministers who work their way through all of these different issues: justification, sola scriptura, the nature of the church, free will, all these different issues that they had to grapple with. And in each case, they wound up becoming Catholic. And I wonder if that might be a good book for you to sort through as a way to kind of get your bearings with regard to the Catholic Church. I have a feeling that in that book, There We Stood, Here We Stand, you'll find some answers to some of these questions that might, at the moment anyway, be barriers to becoming Catholic.
Yeah, I'll check that out. I don't think we probably have enough time to address why I'm Lutheran, but just kind of a follow-up question. I guess, do some of these things, I guess I'd say, sorry, let me restart here.
It's okay.
Historically, it seems like the Christian church is splitting more and more. And I guess, do some of these things continue to drive that wedge in the split? Or are there things that...
Oh, I think I see what you're
collectively we brought these churches together and said, hey, these are some things we could bring together on common grounds and to unify us. Does that make sense?
I think I see more clearly now what you're asking. Well, my sense is this. To whatever extent that Christians of goodwill, Catholic, Lutherans, Methodists, Baptists, Calvary Chapel, whatever, to the extent that somebody is a Christian and he's a person of goodwill, and we are able to work together to counter some of the problems that exist in our culture, social problems, ideological problems, I would say our default should always be, let's seek the unity necessary to do that. But the transcendent kind of unity that I wonder if that's what you're referring to, that Jesus prayed for in John chapter 17, that has to be a unity that's based on truth and not compromise. And the only way to achieve that unity would be to sort through those areas of disagreement and arrive at a unity that's based on truth. So if I could offer you this way of looking at it, I would separate those kinds of unity into two categories. One would be unity of purpose. How can we stand against cultural problems? That's one thing. But then the unity that Jesus was speaking about with regard to actual true unity in the church, so to speak, that's going to require those doctrinal divisions to be overcome. So that's why I would recommend that book, Why There We Stood, Here We Stand, as a way to help you process these big picture issues, so that my hope is that anyway that you'll become a Catholic. That way this issue of unity is no longer an issue for you personally, and perhaps even for some of the people that you can influence.
Nathan, thanks so much. We do appreciate the call. We've got lots of calls, though, so I'm going to keep moving. 888-318-7884 is the number, 888-318-7884. Patrick, I'm just looking at a note here that I wrote to myself about you. You have a busy summer coming up. You're going to be on pilgrimage, and, well, a lot of your summers in the same area, though. Apparently, you really like being in California.
I love being in California. I'm from California. My wife and I both. Well, yeah, thanks for mentioning that. I will be leading a pilgrimage to the California Mission. This is in the footsteps of St. Junipero Serra. We'll be starting in San Diego, your backyard, as a matter of fact, on June the 3rd, and it will be an air-conditioned motor coach pilgrimage. I know St. Junipero Serra did not have an air-conditioned motor coach. He was on foot with a bad leg, by the way,
Yeah.
but we're going to go... We're going to go in his footsteps in an air-conditioned motor coach. That'll be June 3rd through June 10th, and we will go to all the California missions. And then also in August, actually the weekend of August 3rd through 5th, I'll be conducting the Real Love, Real Life event in Anaheim. And that's going to be a great opportunity for Catholic young adults, especially to get together. There will be music, talks, daily mass, banquet meals, presentations galore. Patrick Coffin's going to be there. I'll be there, and a number of other people are going to be presenting. And it's especially good for people maybe who haven't found that right person to get married to. There are going to be a lot of people there who will be of like mind and interested in Catholic radio and Catholic answers and things like that. All that information about the Real Love event is available at reallovereallife.com. And I encourage anybody listening to be sure to watch the video to get the full effect of the reallovereallife.com event.
So you're going to be building up Catholic culture by starting a whole bunch of Catholic families. People are
Wouldn't that be great?
It would be great.
Yeah. And I hope some of those families, the moms and dads who meet at the Real Love event and wind up having children after they're married, of course, I hope that they'll remember that Patrick is a good, strong name for a boy. What the heck, right?
That's why you invited Patrick Coffin. Okay, just kidding.
No, that's not the reason.
But let me ask you something. When you go on these mission pilgrimages that you do, are there a lot of people who kind of need to be disabused of some of the nonsense about the Franciscans and the mission system? And I mean, yes. I know that not everything is nonsense. Certainly, the Spanish Empire had its share of cruelties. Let's put it that way.
But as did every other grouping of people.
Sure.
Indians had their share of cruelties. Europeans had their share of cruelties. It's a human problem. It's not a European or white problem.
Right. So do you find that people, though, have kind of taken or drunk the Kool-Aid when it comes to Father Serra and the Franciscans and are surprised to find out what wonderful men these were?
Indeed, yeah. Many people, without really knowing the details historically of what the Franciscan fathers did and the Dominican fathers, what these Catholic priests did in essence, especially with the Franciscans, they founded the state of California. Father Junipero Serra was one of the founders of the state of California. He built the original infrastructure of the state of California with regard to the missions that he established. And on this tour, on this pilgrimage for the California missions, again, starting on the 6th of, the 3rd of June, we talk about the history, and you see the history in the missions. You actually see the places, and we traverse the territory. And throughout this whole experience, you actually will learn about the reality of what really happened, and how, contrary to the popular theme that St. Junipero Serra was abusive to the Indians, or that he was a slave driver, these things are not true. And the truth actually comes out in historical context. And for those who are interested in joining me, or at least they just want more information, just go to canterburypilgrimages.com/Patrick Madrid, and they'll find the information there. Canterbury, like the Canterbury Tales, canterburypilgrimages.com/Patrick Madrid. All the info is there about the California Mission Trail.
Yeah, it's a good thing because in California, well, you know how it is. I mean, it's in many ways there's a kind of political correctness about the whole thing that just doesn't care what the real story is. It just wants to say, well, of course these priests were just colonizers and whatever else,
and oppressors, and it's part of the cultural narrative that sees the Catholic Church as this kind of colonial power of conquest, keeping in mind that I think what many people fail to recognize is that the Catholic Church started in Jerusalem. It did not start in some European center of power. Eventually the church spread there, but this is a Middle Eastern religion that came out of Jerusalem with Jewish roots.
Right. I can remember telling somebody one time, Patrick, that Jesus was born in Asia, and the person being like, what are you talking about? Like, well, where did you think he was born? He wasn't born in Africa. He wasn't born in Europe. Which continent do you think he was born
They're
on?
thinking by Asia, they're thinking Korea or Japan or something like that.
Right. Yeah, right, indeed. The music says we got to take a break. I'm so glad you're sharing the real truth about Father and Saint Junipero Serra. We'll be right back with more Open Forum with Patrick Madrid right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers is doing it again. We're holding our 5th annual Apologetics Conference this September in beautiful San Diego, California, and we'd like to see you there.
We've had a wonderful time going home all enthused.
Every time we come here, it's just an incredible experience.
Normally you'd have to root through a dozen different books to get half the stuff I've learned here.
These guys are so amazing. I always get so much, learn so much. I've already signed up for next year.
Join us this September 27th to the 30th for a lively and inspiring conference with an all-star lineup of speakers guaranteed to jumpstart your faith. All of your favorite Catholic Answers apologists and special keynote speaker Raymond Leo Cardinal Burke.
I enjoy the atmosphere and the friendliness of the people, and I'm having a great time.
I love it. I'm so glad I came here.
I've just learned so much. I've been a Catholic all my life. It's just been so wonderful.
I love it. I want to come back every year.
God helps those who help themselves. Preach the gospel always. When necessary, use words. We all hear sayings like these, and we assume they come from the Bible, the saints, or famous Christian writers. Nobody can seem to place their origin, but by sheer repetition, they've acquired a halo of truth. In my new book, What the Saints Never Said, I look at over 40 of these well-known sayings and track them back to their original sources. You'll be surprised at what I found. Some are close to what was really said. Many were misattributed or twisted beyond their original meaning, and more than a few of these sayings were simply made up. I hope by setting the record straight, I can make you aware of the theological errors that can lead us away from the faith and offer you authentic quotes from Scripture, saints, and scholars that will draw you closer to our faith. Get your copy of What the Saints Never Said by calling 1-888-291-8000, by visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or by asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
We need EWTN Radio for the reason that Mother Angelica founded this entire enterprise. She always saw this as a spiritual growth network. It was to be an enterprise in media that reached people in all aspects of their life. She saw this as a holistic approach to reaching the whole person in the middle of the world and bringing them truth and life.
Raymond Arroyo thinks Catholic radio is important. So should you.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live, Open Forum. Because it's Tuesday, that means it's Open Forum. And I want to encourage you to visit My Story. Over the years, we've heard thousands of stories of how the ministry of Catholic Answers and Catholic Answers Live have impacted souls around the world. Share your story. You just go to mystory@catholic.com. You're making, those of you who have gone there and shared your stories, it's just been wonderful for us, and it means so much, and it starts to help us to kind of put together the picture of what Catholic media is doing. This is what Shayna from Idaho wrote. We're so grateful for what you wrote too, Shayna. Thank you to Tim Staples and the whole Catholic Answers team, which could be a garage band name, I suppose. Kind of long. Growing up, I was told. I say that because Patrick Madrid you have a website of garage band names, right?
Well, it's at patrickmadrid.com, my website. If you type in garage bands, you'll find the list there.
And so Shayna goes on, growing up, I was told what Catholics believe, but not why we believe it. So many of us, the same thing, Shayna. Through resources like Catholic Answers, I slowly started learning the why behind Catholic belief systems, and that made all the difference, and now I'm an all-in crazy Catholic lady. I'm deeply grateful to you all for helping me down that path of truth. Shayna from Idaho. Shayna, thank you so much for that. And as an all-in crazy Catholic man, I am happy to hear that you got it. And what we mean when we say crazy Catholic, I think you would agree with me, Shayna, is crazy for the Lord Jesus and the love that he shares with the whole world through the Catholic Church. Again, go to mystory.com, share your story. We'd love to read it, and we'll do it. If you give us permission, we'll read it on the air. Let's go to Ryan in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, listening on 990 AM. Ryan, you are on with Patrick Madrid. Your question.
Yeah, hi. I wish that I was on with Tim Staples for this. I've actually been on the phone for almost an hour now. But it was because I was watching him on YouTube, and he said that all the baptized are members of the body of Christ. And I wanted to know if that means that if somebody denies Catholic teaching, they're still a member of the Catholic Church, kind of like a once Catholic, always Catholic kind of thing with your baptism. So I just wanted to know if that's what he was saying, or if I was misunderstanding him, because so I just was wondering.
Ryan, I'm sorry that I made you wait so long. I apologize. That is my fault. I'm the guy in charge of the phones. But and I can understand why you wanted to talk to Tim about that. But Patrick Madrid's pretty good at this. So
I will gladly take a backseat to Tim Staples in terms of his prowess when it comes to explaining the faith. So I have no qualms about that. But I will say this, not having heard, Ryan, what Tim Staples said, if you are asking whether or not non-Catholics are members of the body of Christ by virtue of their baptism, the answer is yes. And a Catholic Pope said so. He's not the only one, obviously, but Pope Pius XII, in his encyclical letter called Mystici Corporis Christi, and that means on the mystical body of Christ, he said as much, and he emphasized that because, as it says in the book of Ephesians, the epistle to the Ephesians, that there's one faith, one Lord, one baptism. There isn't like a Lutheran baptism or a Calvary Chapel baptism or a Baptist baptism. There's only baptism. And baptism as such, you might say, is owned and operated by the church that Christ established, namely the Catholic Church. So when somebody is validly baptized, then that person is, by virtue of Christ's power in the sacrament, according to St. Thomas Aquinas, he is incorporated into the mystical body of Christ. And 2 says it subsists in the Catholic Church. That's just a fancy way of saying that the Catholic Church is the locus. It is the expression or the presence, the reality of the true church. And so people can be baptized, and when they're baptized, they are members of the Catholic Church, in some cases without even realizing it. So let's say somebody gets baptized validly in a stream or the ocean or a backyard swimming pool. As long as it's a valid baptism, that person has been incorporated into the mystical body of Christ and has a connection with the Catholic Church. So then it becomes a question of, does that person ever reach the point where he realizes this connection that he has with the Catholic Church and hopefully winds up becoming a Catholic in the case of somebody who was baptized outside the church? Does that get to the heart of your question?
Yeah, I was actually wondering if you could give me in Mystici Corpus Christi where he says that, because I know that in Mystici Corpus Christi, Pius XII actually says that not every sin is by its own nature to sever a man from the body of the church, except for heresy, apostasy, and schism. So I think you might be mistaken on that.
Yeah, no, I'm not mistaken. Look at paragraph 22. He actually cites the passage that I just quoted from Ephesians. He says, "As therefore in the true Christian community, there is only one body, one Spirit, one Lord, and one baptism, so there can only be one faith." And this is where he gets into the question of the person who may not accept the Catholic Church as such. He says, "And therefore, if a man refuse to hear the church, let him be considered, so the Lord commands, as a heathen and a publican. It follows that those who are divided in faith or government cannot be living in the unity of such a body, nor can they be living in the life of its one divine Spirit." So he takes up this question in paragraph 22, and he says here that in the case of somebody who doesn't accept the Catholic Church, that person in essence is cut off from the church that he has been baptized into. But he speaks about the effects of baptism, as does St. Thomas Aquinas, to use another example, as saying that you are made a member of the mystical body of Christ by virtue of your baptism. Now, what you do with that membership afterward, that can have two different, conclusions. One would be that you separate yourself from the church, or that you enter the church in the case of somebody who's not baptized. So no, he's very clear on this point, and I would suggest you check out paragraph 22.
Okay, Ryan?
Yeah, well, you just cited 22, but it said that those who are divided in faith cannot be in the unity. So you just said what? So he says elsewhere.
Ryan, I'm sorry. Wait, I got to interrupt you for a quick second because you guys are talking on a level that I'm not quite grasping all of it. Ryan, is your
but
point?
I am.
Your point, Ryan, is that you're trying to make is that there are some baptized who are not members of the body of Christ. Is that the point that you want to make?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Now you're mistaken there, because the reality is that by virtue of baptism, see, you have an irrevocable, permanent, indelible character that's imprinted on your soul. You can't efface that. You can't lose that if you've been validly baptized. So you are made a member of the body of Christ, but you can sever yourself from membership in the church, the visible presence of Christ on earth. So you have to make the distinction here that baptism irrevocably makes you a member of the body of Christ, but you can actually, through your own actions, you can say, I'm not going to enter the church, for whatever the reasons may be. And St. Pius, there's a little bit of Freudian slip there. I think that he should be St. Pius XII. But Pope Pius XII takes up both issues. Now, Mystici Corporis Christi is a long document, so it would not be, I don't think, serviceable for us to go paragraph by paragraph, but I just gave you one example where he says how somebody who is validly baptized, can actually absent himself from the church. So I'll leave it to you to read the rest of the document, but if you take the teaching of the church in its totality, it says that baptism does incorporate you into the body of Christ, and if it doesn't, then you would have to say that these are invalid baptisms when somebody baptizes with valid form and matter with the intention of doing what the church does. You'd have to somehow claim that that is not real in order to hold a position that those who are baptized outside the Catholic Church are not thereby made members of the body of Christ. And you can't do that because that's not what the church teaches.
Ryan, thanks very much. And call anytime, Ryan. We especially Tuesdays and Thursdays, we do open forum, and maybe even Tim will be back, even though we have a whole group of really fine apologists. But I have to take a break, so we will say thanks and move on. And more of your questions for Patrick Madrid on Catholic Answers Live right after this.
Catholic Answers. Our success depends on you.
Catholic Answers is a media ministry that serves Christ by explaining and defending the Catholic faith. We help Catholics grow in their faith, we bring former Catholics home, and we lead non-Catholics into the fullness of the truth. Our goal is to be the most trusted and accessible source for sharing, explaining, and defending the Catholic faith through as many media as possible, from personal contact to the most innovative means of mass communication. Have questions? We've got answers. Catholic Answers. Visit us today at Catholic.com or call us with your questions at 619-387-7200.
Can you trust the basis of the Christian faith? The Christian faith is under constant attack today in numerous ways, but the attack that does the most damage is the one that asks a deceptively simple question. What if your faith is based on a myth? The skeptics come with arguments to cast doubt in numerous ways, often attacking the reliability of the New Testament and the Gospels. And the sad news is that most people don't know how to answer these charges. The good news is that there are answers to each and every one of them, good, solid answers. That's why Catholic Answers Studios has just released Jimmy Akin's new DVD, The Dawn of Christian History. With his characteristic wit and passion as a master storyteller, Jimmy takes you through an exciting detective story that reveals how history supports the Christian faith. Order your copy of The Dawn of Christian History today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
A lot of people think that street evangelization involves yelling out of a bullhorn telling people that they're going to hell. Not so with St. Paul Street Evangelization. Our methods are non-confrontational and effective. We simply offer information on the Catholic faith along with rosaries, miraculous medals, and prayer. Pope Francis wrote about how beautiful it is to see street preachers joyfully bringing Jesus to every corner of the earth. Street evangelization is fun and fruitful. Join us today at streetevangelization.com.
Call now with your question. 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Patrick Madrid is our guest, and open forum is our topic, meaning your topic is the topic. Whatever is on your mind about the Catholic faith, about the Catholic Church, Catholic life, those are the very questions that we're willing to take. And you don't have to be Catholic to call. Anybody can call. Let's start with this segment with Michael in Lafayette, Indiana, watching on Facebook Live. Thanks for watching on Facebook Live. Michael, your question for Patrick.
Hello. People often say that love is supposed to be unconditional. Well, God says that we will get into heaven, but we need to repent and turn away from sin, or at least try to. Does this make God's love conditional? Thank you.
Oh, very good. The answer in that sense, I think, would be yes, that there's a condition placed upon human free will accepting this free gift of grace. In other words, God is not going to force somebody to receive it. That would not be love. And since God created human beings out of love and for love, with the capacity for love, we have to be free. So if in this sense you're referring to what's the condition, the condition would be that the human being accepts this and responds to it. But if by unconditional love you mean that God loves everybody without condition, because as the Bible says, before anything, he loved us first. So while we were yet dead in our sins, while we had turned away from him, while we were still stranded in the isolation of sin, he nonetheless still loved us. That's a different kind of unconditional love, meaning that, as Jesus said in John chapter 3, verse 16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever should believe in him would not perish but have eternal life. That's the other kind of unconditional love that you might mean, and I don't know what you're referring to, but that means that God loves everybody so much that he's willing to extend this grace to everybody without exception. Not everybody will accept it. Not everybody will be saved. But God has that love for all of his natural children. He wants them to become supernatural children through baptism and membership in the church. So I guess it would depend upon which version of unconditional love you're referring to.
I guess I was referring to when people refer to unconditional love as being, well, no matter what you do, I'll love you.
Yeah, well, that's not the kind of unconditional love that we mean when we talk about God. Because as you yourself mentioned, Jesus said, unless you repent, you will also perish. So Jesus is really clear that repentance, turning away from sin, accepting this gift of grace is a requirement. It's a necessity, and without that, somebody can't be saved. Now, that's under the ordinary circumstances. We're not referring to infants who don't have that capacity, for example. But the normal circumstances for the average person, it requires that. So that's the condition. And if that's what you're referring to, then no, God does not have unconditional love for us. He loves us unconditionally, but he places conditions upon our salvation. And so that responsive love that he's asking for, the condition is that we have to freely choose it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Michael, thank
you. Does
you.
that help?
Yes. I think what comes to my mind is I've heard some people refer to the Catholic Church as also very extreme in their mercy. Do you think that applies to this circumstance?
Well, I mean, I depending on how somebody words it, I mean, think of it this way. Let's say that you have a 20-year-old son who's getting involved in drugs and drinking and other problems like that. Now, you love your son without condition. You love him because you love him. You love him because he's your son. And he doesn't have to do anything to earn your love. You love him unconditionally for that reason. But you may say, if you want to live in my house, you can't be doing drugs. If you want to have a presence in the family, you can't be a criminal. You can't be hurting people. And you can place conditions on the nature of the relationship, but it doesn't mean that you don't love him without conditions because he's your son. I realize that we use the term unconditional love in various ways, but this is a distinction that I think is important for us to understand. We can turn away from God and say, I don't accept your conditions. And he'll say, okay, fine, that's your free choice. But it doesn't mean that he doesn't love us. The very fact that we exist is evidence that God loves us unconditionally because he keeps us in existence from moment to moment.
Okay, Michael?
It's very interesting because I wonder how ignorant people are when they refuse God's love.
I know, it's incredible, isn't it? Especially for somebody who understands it. Granted, not everybody does, but take the prodigal son. I'm pretty sure that the prodigal son whom Jesus spoke about, he understood that his father loved him and that all of his father's wealth and holdings would eventually be his, at least his portion of it. And even still, he turned away from his father. And he wanted to go take his money and live with prostitutes and riotous living and all that. Even he was willing to do that. I think there's a lesson for us that unconditional love that God has for us can be spurned. But thankfully, as Jesus said in that parable, God is always willing to accept us back, provided that we do so, we come back to him before it's too late.
Thanks, Michael. I do appreciate it. It's the mystery of iniquity, isn't it, Patrick? Why?
Good way to put it, yeah.
Why would anybody do that? And we even ask it about ourselves, though, don't we? Why? Why would I do that when I know how much God loves me?
And, St. Paul, he actually said something. He said, the thing that I know that I shouldn't do, the sin that I know I shouldn't do, I do.
Right.
This has been the thing. And what I want to do to be good, I don't do that. So it is that mystery of iniquity.
Let's try Nate in Dallas, Texas. Nate, you are next with Patrick Madrid. Your question, please, Nate.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. Good afternoon. If you don't mind, I'd like to shout out to Billy since I got his slot as soon as he was on mute and got passed over. So thank you, Billy. And my question is...
Oh, wait a second. Are you talking about the guy who said he waited on hold for an hour before?
No, I think that's a different person.
Oh,
I think,
okay.
Billy was someone else.
So go ahead.
Sorry about that. My question is about faith and works or faith alone. And I wanted to ask about why did Jesus say to the thief on the cross, I'll see you in heaven? That seems like at the last minute he just had faith alone, not a lifetime of works. And why deathbed conversions are okay in Catholic in Catholicism. Excuse me, and also in pop culture, when a famous atheist dies, Christians and Catholics wonder and hope that they converted. And there's also the other pop culture phenomenon of there's no atheists in foxholes. So these all seem to go against these faith plus works mantras and say that faith alone is okay and acceptable. Thanks.
Okay. Well, I think maybe the solution to the question is found in the norm versus the exception. And in the case of the good thief on the cross, this was an exception insofar as he had no opportunity to engage in good works, what St. Paul speaks of in Romans chapter 1 as the obedience of faith. We are called, as it says in Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 through 9, for by grace you have been saved through faith. This is a gift of God. This is not of works, lest anyone should boast. And then he goes on to talk about how we've been created to do good works. So the gift of grace is the ultimate, is the foundation of salvation. And in the case of somebody who did not have, like the good thief, he had no opportunity to engage in an actual work, like, say, feeding a hungry person or clothing the naked or something like that. Nonetheless, he did a work in the sense that he had faith in Christ. And as it says in Ephesians 2, as I quoted a moment ago, for by grace you have been saved through faith. This is a gift of God. This is not of works, lest anyone should boast. He's referring there to works done apart from grace. But to have faith is itself, it's a work, it's an act of the will. It's the person saying, I do believe and I accept this and I will act accordingly. So if you think about works in a broader sense, then even the good thief on the cross, he actually did a good work in grace in that he said yes and he believed. He had faith. God doesn't have faith in himself and then pretend that we are the ones who had faith. He actually provides us with the grace necessary so that we can do that work of having faith. So that's the kind of work, quote unquote, that the good thief on the cross did. Now, I know you had a series of other questions and I've actually forgotten them. So if there's time, give me one of them and I'll try to answer that.
It was just about how when atheists die, Catholics say, hope that they converted at the last minute, or there's no atheists in foxholes.
Okay, right. Well, I've never been in a foxhole during battle, but I'd have to imagine that if there were bullets whizzing over my head and mortars going off, even if I were an atheist, I would probably be thinking pretty clearly about the possibility that I might die, and if I died, what would become of me? I think that's what that phrase, there are no atheists in foxholes, I think that's what it means, is that when you get into that kind of an extremity and you realize that you could lose your life from one moment to the next, that you think about an afterlife. Is there an afterlife? Is there a God? And I think some people actually wind up having faith in those extreme moments. But as far as hoping that atheists had a conversion experience, we Catholics recognize that God's giving his grace to everybody sufficiently, even up to the very last moment. And I'm quite certain that there are some people who, in maybe that final moment of lucidity, they have a conversion, they accept God's grace, they are sorry for their sins because they love God, who maybe they just have begun to believe in, and can be saved. In fact, some of the great saints, St. John Vianney, for example, or St. John Bosco, to name two, it was made known to them by God that certain criminals who were executed, or in the case of St. John Vianney, referring to a man who had committed suicide by jumping off of a bridge, God made it known to them that in the final moment, just before the soul departed from the body, that these men, they actually had a conversion experience and they were saved. So I don't know if that gets to the heart of your question, but that's certainly something that we Catholics believe in and hope for, that even up to that final moment, people may be willing to accept this grace.
Nate, I'm going to say thanks, and we're trying to get one call in real quick before we have to end the hour. Let's see if we can get Jay in Valdosta, Georgia, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Jay, can you phrase your question relatively quickly for Patrick?
Yes, hi. Thank you for taking my call. I guess my question is this. Does the church teach that Mary did not experience pain during childbirth? And if so, how do we explain Revelations 12, verse 2?
Where the woman who is wailing aloud in pain as she labored to give birth to a male child. The church says that Mary was not under the curse of original sin because she never had any sin in her life. From the moment of her conception, she was preserved free from all sin, both the condition of original sin but also actual sin. So there would be no necessity for her excuse me, to experience the pain of childbirth. However, it is something that the church says that Mary, in fact, could have freely chosen to experience this if that's something that she wanted to do. But by virtue of her sinlessness, it would not be required of her to experience that. And a similar thing is that death is one of the maledictions that God pronounced upon Adam and Eve. Death, or the loss of immortality, is something that Adam and Eve lost for themselves and for us. And Jesus himself, who was utterly sinless, he experienced death. He didn't have to, but he did. Jesus was also baptized. He didn't have to be baptized. He didn't need to be baptized. He was sinless, but he did so, as he said to St. John the Baptist, to fulfill the prophecy and also to fulfill, as we Catholics would recognize, the institution of the sacrament. So in the same way, although the church does not say definitively that Mary did or did not experience pain in childbirth, the early church fathers who comment on this, as I understand their comments, the general view is that Mary did not experience pain in childbirth, but that wouldn't preclude the fact that she would be, literally speaking, the woman spoken of in Revelation chapter 12, verses 1 and forward.
Wrong end of the Bible there, Patrick.
Sorry, what's
You
that?
went to the wrong end of the Bible.
I was at the other end. Sorry
Yeah.
about that. Yeah.
Jay, what do you make of that?
Well, so in Revelations 12 may not be referring to Mary.
No. The literal meaning of that woman there in Revelation 12, 1 and forward is the Blessed Virgin Mary. She's the one who gave birth to that male child. There are other meanings that can be understood there, but literally it was the Blessed Virgin Mary who's the woman.
Jay, thanks so much. You did phrase your question quite succinctly, and I appreciate it. Patrick Madrid, thanks for another great hour.
Thank you, Cy. God bless you.
If you want to see Patrick this summer around California, you can join him on his tour, the pilgrimage to the California missions. Just go to CanterburyPilgrimages.com. Patrick Madrid, you'll find it there. Or reallovereallife.com for the event in Orange County. We will see you tomorrow, God willing, on Catholic Answers Live.